So just a bit of background of what I have found. First off, thanks for joining today. I did want to just note the history of us in Coates Hall. We moved to Coates Hall for the 1982-83 academic year. At the time, there were administrative and faculty offices, a computer lab, cataloging lab, and reference lab, a student lounge, and the library had about 30,000 volumes. And what they called the fields of library science, bibliography, and related subjects. It's actually interesting. The earliest descriptions of the SLIS library included guides for selecting good books and quality reading material.
Yeah.
But so it just so happens to coincide that we've been here for 40 years. And it's also going to be our 90th anniversary.
Year of accreditation. Yeah.
For accreditation. So everything just happens to be lining up. So just to get the discussion started, although we've already had some interesting memories, what do you remember of your first time? And this might be when you were a candidate of an interviewing of coming to see SLIS and Coates Hall.
Well, that is the case for me. I was there interviewing for the position in 1990. It seemed like a very nice place.
Well, I had two things. I remember that beautiful entrance with the beautiful palm trees. And the fact that we had, at the time, an African-American director of SLIS, because I came from Illinois where we had no African-American on the faculty. And at that time, library science librarians had a discussion group in ALA. It was actually every library school had a library, and they exchanged bibliographies, and they were very organized. And Alma Dawson was one of the leaders of that group. Well, now, of course, I think that Wisconsin may be the only school that still has a library. And it had a second floor. I mean, you know, and a mezzanine. It was really wonderful. I think that's what I remember the most.
Wow.
I will just note here, because I'm guessing three of you have not seen this, the remnants of the library and the student lounge and our classrooms is a COVID testing center.
SLIS no longer has that space. It seems to me that academic affairs is going to start moving some things into that space, but it has been a COVID testing center for the past, I guess it's going on 3 years now.
Well, it was a nice physical plant in 83. I mean, with the library and the labs. And so it was half of the building. And then, of course, the other half was computer science. Is computer science still there?
They're part of engineering now.
You're laughing, Bert.
It is now leadership slurred. The School of Leadership and Human Resource Development is the other end of the hall. Oh, no, they would have a fit if they heard you say that. Yes.
So my first memory, I had been working in Middleton for several years, and the list was on the second floor. So I knew the faculty there. So I can't remember my first memory of Coates because I knew the building for several years. What I do remember is that it seemed like it was a long walk when SLIS did move. It seemed like it was a long walk from Middleton to get to SLIS, and that you came down that long, what seemed like a long corridor with the little half door on the left side.
Oh, that's right.
It intrigued me forever. So when I was trying to remember my first memory, that probably is my first strong memory of Coates. But I do remember SLIS in Middleton and was very sorry that they were being taken away. Although that became my office, so I wasn't entirely sorry. But it was very nice to have that quiet collegiality between the preachers and the practitioners.
I do walk by that door, and I always think of Wizard of Oz when I
Yes.
walk by
I
it.
think
So.
of hobbits. It's just, there are hobbits behind that door.
So,
Well-
Bert, what do you remember?
Well, Kathleen and I, of course, arrived at the same time. But my first impression actually was during my interview. And I was most impressed by the fact that there were 3 people from computer science sitting in on my talk. And in fact, that computer science was there in the building. It was kind of amazing that there was that much relationship between the 2 organizations.
I wonder if was it intentional to put them together, or we just each fit into the amount of space that was available.
I have no idea. I assume it just occurred.
Yeah.
Peggy Richardson or Patsy Parrott might remember some of that.
Well, when you think about it, computer science hardly existed in 1983 as
Well,
a
yeah.
discipline.
Right.
And really, Bert and Don Kraft, I mean, if I ran into a student, somebody sent me a message, I was working in the archives of ACES, and he said, "You were at the epicenter." I said, "What?" And he said, you were at the epicenter with Boyce and Kraft in the same building. And I just remember Don and Bert making little robots that would show books. Remember Erasure?
We tried, didn't work.
But you were doing that in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And so looking back today, somebody who's a scholar of information science sees that point with Bert and Don
Yeah.
because of course then Don would drink get coffee from us because his people didn't make coffee, and he would drip coffee all along
All down the hall.
and just drive the staff crazy. But he was there every day telling you the same joke. And it really was exciting. And then we got the Council on Library Resources grant to do a joint degree between computer science and library science. And we were still calling it library science then. And that was very early. And Bert managed all that. So it was that would be a good reason to come for Bert, not for me, but.
And with regard to the coffee, I can remember talking with Jane Robbins, who did the planning for the new location over in Coates, and talked to her about the fact that there was a kitchen off the office, someplace where you could make coffee so that the computer scientist would come and visit you. But I thought it was just marvelous that there was water and she said, well, you always want to have a workroom in a library that has a sink, and it seemed like it was a good idea to have it in those offices. But over the years, I appreciated that so much, that we had a place to clean up and a place to make coffee, and her foresight. I haven't had a chance to look. Is Jane still around?
Jane.
I haven't heard that she isn't. But
Yeah,
Yes.
you know, I think when she retired from FSU, she just kind of went and did other things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure we would have heard. if something
She was
had
moving to
happened.
Buffalo. She said she was moving to Buffalo and going to make pottery. And no, I would not see her at any conferences because she had done that for so many years. She wanted to do something different.
Yeah, I think she dropped out.
Although we already touched on this a little bit, I'm really interested to hear more about the classrooms and the different labs and the student gathering space, because, again, as I noted in the email, that was all gone before I started, or right after. I think I might have been the last faculty member to teach a face-to-face class in Coates. I taught it the spring of 2014 or spring of 2015, and I was the last one to teach in the compressed video room. And I was the last faculty member at LSU to ever teach in the compressed video room. They demolished it right afterwards.
So we were first and last. I think there's a story right there.
Yeah. But yeah, what were the different labs like? What were the different labs?
It was a cataloging lab, and it had, Library of Congress subject headings and Sears subject headings and all those books that people used to catalog then before we had access to OCLC.
Yeah.
So,
The big red books?
mhm.
Mhm.
That's how I learned.
And multiple copies.
Yeah. And the computer lab was, well, again, when I started, I was saying when I was teaching the computer fundamentals course, it was things like, now here's how you save your work to a floppy disk so that you will have it in the future. And that's, I mean, it was literally the floppy disk with the program that you had to insert first and then save your work to the second floppy disk so you have it. So the computer lab was your basic black screen, orange print floppy disk drives.
And we were teaching such very basic information.
Yeah.
First, because of Patsy, we had both Macs and PCs. So
Yeah,
we had to be
right.
the faculty had to become ambidextrous because the students were learning both ways. But I remember Bob Molyneux, when he was teaching, would go through at night and delete everything the students had saved on the hard drive or whatever it was called then, because he wanted to make sure that they learned to back up to their own floppy. And they would come in just horrified in the morning saying, but it's all gone, it's all gone. He said, you'll never make that mistake again. You will always back things up.
Yeah.
Well, of course, when I got there, we were right on the transition point between mainframe use and personal computer use. And the decision had just been made, I believe, to go to personal computers. But there was still a lot of talk about joining in with computer science's mainframe computer room, which they kept running for a long time.
That actually did just make me think that the LSU mainframe was installed prior to SLIS moving to Coates Hall and is still being used.
Well, it's a little bit different, but yeah. But actually, the one I was talking about in Coates Hall was actually a VAX, considered smaller than the machine in the computer center, but still a centralized machine that was running all the terminals that the computer science had.
Yeah.
And I forget, did I read somewhere that there were GAs or there was, no, it wasn't a GA, it was an actual staff position.
Well, there was.
Yeah.
The lab, I don't remember what the title was.
But like a lab
Coordinator.
tech or.
Yeah.
I think it was a coordinator.
So they would deal with the lab. They would do what you do now, Ed. It would be the person I would go to and say, and why isn't this working? Can you show me why this isn't working? Can you fix it? And I think they taught the undergrad course in computer.
Not
Computer.
well, when that was developed, yeah.
Yeah.
But they were there to run interference so that the students wouldn't come running to
Mhm.
Bert and Danny saying, what? But they would say, remember, this is what you do, or here's the crib sheet, this is what you do, or turn it off and turn it back on again, and that'll solve almost all your problems.
Well, there was a transitional period there where the students were coming in knowing more than we did about how to use computers.
Yeah.
So not more than Bert did, but more than most of us did, you know. So the students were actually, we'd find one that came in, it was, you know, kind of an early adopter. We would make that person into the lab assistant, and they would sort of, it was a, you know, and gradually, one at a time, the faculty would get a computer. It wasn't like we all of a sudden got computers. I think each one was a coveted purchase. It had to be talked through and money saved for it. So Bert probably got the first one, and maybe Danny Wallace. And, you know, I think gradually they made us all use them. But at first it was just the ones that wanted them. So.
Wow.
And how many classrooms were there that SLIS was using?
There were the two, right? 160, no,
Well, 169 and 171.
171, yeah.
Those were dedicated, and then we used classrooms on the first floor
Yeah.
if we needed them.
Oh, so they were on the first floor.
Yeah.
the two
Well, those
classrooms,
weren't dedicated. Those were, I think, the
Those were
big deal
our-
in university is to have one that's your classroom. And
They were our classroom. Where
As
the two bulletin boards are now on the first
Mhm.
floor, those are right by the doorways to the classrooms.
Oh, like the classroom that has the sign that you always edit because they don't point to the door you should be
They should.
using.
That would be 169, which of course, you're not going to understand this, but now extends down to where copying services was. So that's one big, huge classroom now.
So
It was much smaller than that when we had it, Ed.
okay, so the big space on the second floor that had the library and the lounge, when I started, those were our two classrooms. What were those before? Were those the labs?
Whole library.
They were
Or
the
was that
largest.
all library?
Were they offices for the library? Or were
Yeah,
they,
Well,
Yes.
the library office was there, but the whole rest of the space was library.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
the library was really big. I mean, it was very large, and it had a second floor. I mean,
oh, the mezzanine, yeah. I think
And
those
there were meetings-
classrooms must have been created after the library moved out.
I think so. But there was also a
Okay.
good sized meeting room off the library that we used for faculty meetings. And it was used as a study space for students. It's, so when you came in off the hallway, Alma's office was immediately to your left, and you come into the larger space. And if you continued around her office to the left and made another left, you would go into that meeting room, which was very large. And it was a space where students could spread out the cataloging tools and work on things in comfort.
Okay, so that was one of the ones that was turned into a classroom.
I would
Then
think
later.
so, yeah.
I don't,
What happened?
I'm not sure.
That we lost the whole library. It was turned into two classrooms. But the part of the library we didn't lose was essentially Alma's office and a little more, which was added to the space that had been the catalog lab. And
Okay.
that then later, when it wasn't the cataloging lab anymore, we built an office in there for the person that was handling the computer lab for us,
Yeah,
whatever the title was.
that's right.
And out of curiosity, was that the room that was the computer lab area? Was that always frigid cold? Because it's always like 55 degrees in there. It is ridiculous. I mean, we use it for storage now, but
HVAC was always a problem. The dean's office, at least when I was there, was very cold in the winter and very warm in the summer because we were at the end of the line for heated or cooled air, and we always got the leftovers, and it generally wasn't enough.
Well, then they've improved it, I guess. Although, and then there are the days it's just not working at all, but everybody's in the same boat. So, yeah.
And so the mezzanine, after the library moved out, that became a student lounge meeting area.
Yes.
Okay.
And we would play Trivial Pursuit up there. But talk about the hauling furniture up to the third floor storage area,
Yeah.
the attic. There was a lot of hauling of refrigerators and couches and
Easy
tables.
chairs. Yeah.
Yes, and a few computers.
It was a very nice space up there, actually.
I actually think some of the sofas are still up there.
Are still up there. Yeah.
On the mezzanine, because they didn't. When we gave it up, we just said, "That's it. That's all your stuff to move now." Who started the Trivial Pursuit games?
Oh, well, now there's a history here. I'm not sure Ed does know this. When I started, it was volleyball.
That's why we have.
Before that, we were trying to find ways to get the students to interact with the faculty. We tried bowling.
That was
before or
after volleyball,
After volleyball.
because the new 4'11" faculty member said, no, no, my gym class days are behind me. You can't make me do this. So then we did bowling, which I'm minutely better at than I am volleyball. And then the Trivial Pursuit. See, it actually, the first time I remember doing this was a party at my house.
Yes. Oh, we did it at your house for several years.
Yeah.
Sitting outside,
Yeah.
enjoying the fresh air and the
The
liquid
alcohol and the, yeah. But then it evolved into, maybe it's just because it became a much larger group. I'm not sure. And in the early days, the faculty did occasionally win. Occasionally.
Yeah, not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore.
Do you still
We
think
don't
you're still
do
playing?
it. No, we don't do it any. The day of commencement now, we do a something Zoom afterwards. And Ed is the quiz master. So last time it was Ed, I don't even remember. What did we do last time? It was, but we lost. I remember that.
It was Jeopardy style last time.
It was Jeopardy style last time. Next Friday, we're doing, wait for it, Family Feud.
That's great.
Faculty versus students? Family Feud?
Yep.
I pointed out to Ed,
One of those families is much larger than the other.
that was my first comment to him.
Yeah. But
But you could do alumni,
We'll figure it out. But no, Trivial Pursuit. So we try to do some kind of trivia, although that now seems to evolve into other things. Yeah. It's not nearly as much fun.
I find it fun. But that's because I'm in charge.
Yeah,
So
you're not being humiliated.
and because you're a historian, and that means that you have a lot of trivial knowledge.
yeah.
Very trivial.
I live with one, so I'm allowed to say those things.
We did a Mardi Gras crew for a couple years as an activity. That was
Yes. I've seen lots of pictures. How did that come about?
Kathleen.
We just want the Spanish Town Parade was open to all, and it seemed like it would be fun. And people dressed up and threw.
Oh,
beads
yeah.
and-
The students would dress as their favorite characters from books. So we had Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz and things like that. The state library would give us summer reading program promotional material, and we would hand that out. When every time you had to update a database, you would, in those days, you would get a a series of discs that you had to load. So the library always had lots of discs that they were getting rid of. So we would throw those like frisbees, and people would chase after them like they were treasures when nobody had any hardware, and whatever they were going to be able to watch was nothing. But and Kathleen made doubloons.
Yeah.
And we recycled our beads, and we won the worst float award one year from Smiley, and Smiley Anders was one of the judges, and we won the worst float award because we refused to bribe the judges.
Okay,
But
see, that sounds like
it was a
Spanish
wonderful
Town.
experience. And Kathleen and I had young children the same age, and it was a great opportunity for them. The Spanish Town Parade now is a little bit raunchier.
Yeah.
Raunchier.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take my children or grandchildren to that, but
So
it was a wonderful experience. Thank you, Kathleen.
was it more like Midtown is now, or South Downs, where it's more family friendly?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was family friendly.
Yeah.
And they built and saved the float apparatus was probably stored up there on the third floor, and the students would take it down and re-put it together.
Oh God.
And then one year they all dressed up like Barbara Bush. Remember when John Budd wore a dress and pearls? Do you remember that, Bert?
Yes. Oh, my.
So I got here too late, is what I'm hearing. I missed all the really
That kind
good
of fun.
stuff.
Yep.
It was pretty crazy in the 80s, yeah.
I was to say, was this Barbara Bush as First Lady or Barbara Bush as VP?
No, First Lady.
Okay.
First Lady.
So
Her-
like
her-
88.
Yeah, her deal when she was First Lady was literacy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she was even given ALA honorary membership, but she would always wear those pearls.
Girls.
So John Budd got a bunch of students to dress up in dresses and pearls and gray wigs and throw things on the Mardi Gras float.
Yeah.
Nice.
And,
And
you
then
know,
they started charging a lot to become part of the parade, and we didn't do
that
that.
might, yeah, I don't remember it costing anything.
Yeah.
But before
Yeah.
I forget, I did want to talk about comps parties. 'Cause
Comps.
Oh,
Oh.
Lord.
Oh, yes.
we had a faculty member who's passed away now, Lee Shiflett. And Lee lived out on the not the bayou, what?
Levy.
On the levee in St. Gabriel. And he had a house out there and would invite all the students, and they would come and stay all night. And this is a good one for you, Ed. He called the house Turgid Manor because Ed Holly had written a review of one of his books and said something like, "This is a very good book, but it's written in a turgid manner." And so that was the name of the place where we had the parties. And there's a picture around of the kids in front of a motorcycle.
Yep.
That was a turgid manor.
We've got that one. I've seen it recently.
So that was out at Lee's place in St. Gabriel.
Yeah.
So
That was, I find myself these days saying some things out loud about the administration, the university never changes. And there's a voice in my head going, you sound just like Lee Shiflett. And when you were first starting, you were so shocked at Lee saying, it doesn't matter. It's never going to change. Why are you getting upset? Yeah.
Although this really is one of those things that we lose, where very few of our students even live within an hour drive of campus.
Right.
That for me, the nice thing is anytime I go to a conference now,
Yeah.
some of our students are there, any place in the country.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of times it's the first time I ever meet them.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to add, I hadn't really thought of this before, but I'm still going to bring it up. It's one of the things that we kind of lost was the annual banquet.
Yep.
And I think maybe you got to go to one of those.
The very
Because
last one.
Now it's
For
a
the-
college, it's a
Yeah,
college event.
Yeah.
Well, there was one, yeah, it became a college event before I retired. And I think that there was just one or two after that.
I think because I only did one, Beth.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess,
Just
I think,
one with-
I think Ed did, from
Mm-mm.
Shrew.
I don't think so.
Yeah, there was just the
Because
one.
it was a college thing. Because I remember being in that room twice. Over,
Oh, maybe we did do two.
but it wasn't nearly the joyful SLIS alumni event
Mm-mm.
that brought many generations of alumni together, and where we could honor the incoming scholarship recipients, and we
Yep.
could honor the current students, and we could honor the recent alumni going into Beta Phi Mu, and then the people who were giving us donations.
And
So
the
we had-
scholarship recipients would meet the donors and they would sit together and,
Yeah.
but in terms of the wonderful good old days,
I promised myself.
the banquet was just the highlight of the year.
It was, and the Beta Phi Mu party at Charles Patterson's house.
The punch. Oh, the punch.
Yeah, that was-
Do you remember the Patterson Peas?
No, what?
Party was the last one. Publish, participate. I don't remember the first one. That's something you can put in the alumni bulletin and ask who
Who
remembers
remembers the
the
fourth?
Patterson Peas. I'll keep working on that. I'll ask Patsy.
Bert, would you tell about the Russian program? Because
Wow.
I don't know whether or not that's remembered today. It was a great program.
Well, I don't know that it has anything to do with the building, but
Yeah,
I think we're just talking about the time frame at this point.
it's essentially the last 40 years.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to excuse myself for a minute. I'm getting.
Oh, she's being beckoned. So yeah, Bert, do you want to share the story?
well, there's not really much of a story. I trying to remember how I found out about the program, and it's not coming into my head very clearly, but I believe it was a Gates Foundation starting point, and we applied for money to bring in Russian students, and as I remember, Gates had a considerable group of people, maybe 10 or 15, operating in Moscow and the environs at the time, looking for students who would be interested in coming to the States and in supporting people from the US that wanted to go and study in Moscow. And of course, one of the things Gates was interested in was library programs. And so they were interested in supporting us. And we were able to bring in, gosh, 3 or 4 people the first year, maybe another 4 the second, and I think about 4 the third. So we had several students full-time on campus who were Russian citizens, all of whom Well, all but one went back. There was one that went to Canada instead. But I don't imagine the government was too happy about that. But it was, I think, a successful program. Relationships between Russia and the United States were somewhat different in those years than they are now. And I went over to interview students, which was a very interesting experience. I don't recommend Moscow as a tourist site. I later got a chance to go to St. Petersburg, which I thought was a wonderful place, but Moscow you can have.
What was this the program where we had the blind student who needed the seeing eye
No.
dog?
No, she was a Fulbright student.
Oh, that she was a Fulbright student. Oh,
She was a Fulbright.
was she from Kazakhstan? Am I remembering that right?
She was from, she wasn't Russian. She was Mongolian.
Oh, Mongolian. Okay.
Yeah, from begins with a U, Ulubastan, something like that. And we did not really know that she was completely blind when we admitted her. That wasn't a factor. And it was when she arrived and came to orientation and she was holding on to the arm of her sister. And I was thinking, well, this is a strange way to walk into orientation. And then I talked to her and discovered she was blind, that she was living frugally. And her sister had come with her because she had never learned any real independence. She hadn't learned cane walking. The idea of having a guide dog was unheard of. And so we got two students. Her sister ended up taking other courses around campus. We got her hooked up with the people in the state of Louisiana who teach cane walking. And she became very independent within her first few months in Louisiana. And it was a wonderful experience for all of us. She was our second blind student. David, it'll come to me. We had about 10 years earlier.
And now we've had, at least in the past 8 years, we've had several.
Really good.
Blind and deaf. Not simultaneously, but
Well, you know, Louisiana has the largest blind deaf
Oh, yeah.
population in the country, I think.
The Cajun population that didn't marry very far out of their family circles. You know, but yes, we always had deaf students.
well, and I've always wished this is one of those, in all of my free time, which I don't have, but I've always wished that we could develop a relationship with the Louisiana School for the Deaf and Blind, as even maybe with the undergrad program, something there. But Beth, you just brought up something that we haven't talked about: orientation.
Oh, when you were asking about my favorite memories or orientation, orientation and graduation, it was hard for me to decide between them, but I loved orientation. I loved meeting the students that we had only heard about on paper. I loved hearing them talk about their dreams and aspirations and their fears and their challenges. And as all of us said to them, oh, but we did that. Oh, we had kids when we went to school. Oh, we didn't know about doing this. Oh, we had to figure out computers. You already know this. It was a wonderful experience. And being face to face was a huge part of it. When we started doing it, splitting it up and not making it a full day and everything, we lost some of that, but I loved orientations.
Just so you know, all those pictures that were taken during orientation.
Mhm.
Our student, we have a multi-year student worker project where they are digitizing all of our alumni files. And after they're done, they're removing the pictures and putting them in a bin. And eventually, I'm going to use my drum scanner to scan all of the images we have of all of our alumni to do a big giant collage.
Yeah.
Like maybe in the shape of LSU or something. But
Wow.
Oh, good.
but right now we have two big giant bins, and it's, if nothing else, it's fun to look at the fashion changes.
And they bear
because-
dues.
We were taking pictures from the 50s, and then in the 60s and 70s, it switched to Polaroids,
Yeah.
and then back
Oh,
to regular
yes.
pictures. Yep.
Yeah. Beth, we were telling the younger faculty the story the other day about when the university said, you have to put your picture on the website. So a bunch of us immediately went to glamour shots.
Yes.
And what a fun day that was.
Hmm.
And Glamour Shots doesn't exist any longer.
No, still
Yeah.
the best picture ever. If I ever have to use a picture for anything, I use that one. So
I-
you
I-
recognize me.
I will say those pictures are still on the website in the Wayback Machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do chuckle every time I see them because I'm like, that's a glamour shot. So well, obviously I know Carol, but has the elevator always been broken?
It was a low bid item and never
And I should say by broken.
never provided a smooth ride.
Okay.
Okay, wait, I am going to correct Ed here because somehow in recent years, it always works now. There is no more of the push the button and nothing happens. I probably should not have said that out loud because I remember it being out of commission a lot at various times.
Oh yeah, I just meant
when
the
it gets to
dropping
the
thing.
top and goes bung, 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 bung. Yeah. So,
But in the move, we are taking the card catalog with us,
mhm.
even though every time somebody from the university comes over, they always look at it and say, "Oh, could we have that?"
No,
No.
no, you couldn't.
The book press is actually leaving us, but it's going to go get used by the College of Art and Design.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and they can have fun moving it. We moved it once. We don't want to move it
That thing
again.
is heavy. Yeah.
Who's moving into Coates?
We don't know.
Oh,
I think academic affairs is going to pretty much take over that side.
What I'm thinking is the
Center
student
for
success and all of that
the
has been in
writing
the
center.
basement. Yeah, they've been in the basement. And
they
I
keep
think,
flooding.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then supposedly at some point, the library will get torn down. So in 20 years, they might build a new one.
Oh, but it's not going to be a library. It's going to be a digital commons.
It doesn't matter. It's going to be over by the business school because they don't like my idea of putting it on the parade grounds.
no, nobody would go along with that.
No.
Yeah. So any other funny stories or, well, like I said, not so funny stories?
Well, Carol and I once had, it has nothing to do with Coates, but it is the time period. We spent a day with the FBI in Quantico.
Oh, I've heard this story.
Yes, and because I forget the name of the guy, but there was somebody on campus who had some FBI consulting connections.
It was
And-
the Leo project.
Yes, and as law enforcement online, and they wanted to create, and the theory was very good. They wanted to have a database of articles and laws and things that small town sheriffs and police officers would be able to access, so that they would have the same information available that big city police officers would have. So that sounded wonderful. And they wanted us to create the database, which sounded wonderful. And we went to Quantico and we learned a lot more about the FBI. But Carol and I said to them, okay, the first thing you have to do, here's our list of the first 50 articles that we think should be in this database. And now we need to go get copyright permission to include it. And they said, oh no, we don't want to tell the publishers that which articles we're including. And we said, no, you must include, must have permission article by article, unless they want to give you blanket permission for the entire journal to put these in. And they said, and we said, you can't violate the law. And they said, oh yes, we are the law.
You're the FBI.
That sounds about right.
So we didn't make any further progress.
They also did not agree with, and you have to provide some kind of indexing.
Yes.
So this is not just all free text, search every word. And they were like, why? The words are all there. But Beth, is not your favorite memory of that weekend the shoot, don't shoot scenario? This was hysterical. We're doing the laser gun, at the screen. So it was you and I and Dave Robbins. I don't remember, but the three guys.
And the guy who was in charge on campus, who was over, his office was over in Pleasant Hall.
Yeah. And the three guys were jumping up and down going, guns, shoot. And Beth and I were like, we could go back to the library. We could. So the three guys, one of them shot their
children were not allowed
partner.
to have water pistols.
No, so they shot their partner, they shot the first, and Beth and I got up there because we follow instructions well. And I think as it turns out, we both grew up shooting. I did.
Yes, I
got my guy. I just blew him away.
They said to me, he's either going to come out the front door or the back door, so keep an eye on both. And he came out the back door, and this is all on a computer screen. He came out the back door, and I shot once, and then I gave him the gun back. And I said, I killed him, and he said, yeah. And that was the end of it.
That was the end of it.
And then the guys were not happy.
They were not happy and said, okay, now we're going to do the high-speed chase, and that's in real cars. And we said, no, we're not.
So, Carol, take notes of this for the fall faculty retreat, team building exercises.
or a threat, Carol, one shot Carol and
Yeah.
don't mess with her. But I remember also being called into Bert's office, and he said to Carol and me, so why are you turning down these? It was going to be an enormous amount of money for SLIS to work on this, and we were going to have students and everything. And he said, just tell me, why are you not doing this? And we explained the legalities, and he said, okay, now I can go talk to the university administration. So I think the project went ahead, but without any of the professional input that we would have provided.
Yeah. I never heard of it moving forward. I never heard another word about it.
I don't know.
But I still have the official FBI refrigerator magnet. So that alone was worth the trip.
And my husband carried an FBI wallet for many years.
Yeah. Who knew they would have a gift shop?
Yes, who knew?
Of course they have a gift shop.
Of course they have a gift shop.
We also got to go to the FBI library. And when we arrived at night, and Carol and I were heading to the dorm where there was no key, but who would need a key if it's the FBI? So we were walking to the dorm, and we said, oh, that has to be the library. We could identify a building that looked like a library immediately. So we went over and had a good time browsing around in there.
Yeah. It was an experience. And I suppose the other event that stands out in my mind, although it's such a recent one, I'm not even sure how many of you are even, the active shooter situation was Yeah, I was in a meeting over at Peabody and I get the text message saying LSU police have identified an active shooter situation in Coates Hall. So I like call Nicole, who's
I'm
like,
slinking out the door, like
yeah,
quickly down
at the minute he heard it, he
like,
left. He's gone. So I'm staying on the phone with Nicole and there's police and I'm saying, Nicole, get out of your office. It is all glass. Go into my office. Shut the door. Well, it turns out it was an off-duty police officer with a visible.
let's back up for a second because
Oh,
they then sent like they weren't SWAT level police,
they were close.
but they were heavily armed going door to door. And so they did open up Carol's door with their guns drawn at Nicole
Yeah,
because they didn't know anybody was in the room.
yeah. And it does turn out it was an off-duty police officer with a visible gun. One of the maintenance people called it in, as you would, because he wasn't in uniform or anything. But Nicole and Tao and Susie, I mean, people were stuck in their offices for hours while they cleared the building.
Now, I unfortunately made the mistake of I did get out of the building, but they had already cordoned off the parking lot.
Yeah.
So then I just hung out by the tower, by Memorial Tower, and Carol eventually came around and we just kind of sat there and we're like, okay. Yeah, apparently the off-duty police officer decided not to tell the campus police that he was coming on campus with a loaded weapon.
Because
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah. So Nicole had
That would be a memorable occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Carol, I'm going to transition just briefly because this is going to lead me into a good space for us to kind of wrap up. Because I think I don't think everybody kind of even knows right now what the state of the school is. So, Carol, how many students do we have now?
I think we're right under 400.
I thought we were at 430.
I think we're right over 430. See, it changes every week.
Yeah.
With LSU Online, people are admitted 6 times a year. Yeah. Okay.
And we have 4 doctoral students in the Doctor of Design and Cultural Preservation program.
Through the College of Art and Design, but we partner with them for this.
Yeah, and
So that's the museum?
so
Design and cultural what?
in cultural preservation with a specialization in archives.
Yeah.
So I actually teach in the College of Art and Design program, some doctoral seminars.
All right. So that was a very circuitous answer to the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kathleen, Richard Peck left a very, very generous bequest to the school that Bert had originally been the one to work with him on it. It took, fortunately, many, many years of Richard's life. And when he passed away 5 years ago, the money came for a chair, not a
professorship.
And it was going to be the first one in the college. And
I think it still will be.
And it is not moved ahead. And it's to be named for Patsy Parrott.
Yeah.
And Patsy's health is declining, and it would be very important for this to be taken care of while she can be part of it.
But does it need to be a youth services position?
Yes. Well, okay, that's my reaction. I think that was the intent, but honestly, Bert and Beth would have a better.
Well, that's what it says. But I think yeah, and any person that you educate is going to be working with kids in some way. So there are many different things, and that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
This
this has been
this
great.
has been a wide-ranging discussion.
It
And
has brought back so many memories. Thank you.
and we will be destroying this recording very soon because I'm hearing echoes of all the things that I just said.
Oh,
Well,
And
I will tell all of you, you will see a copy of the article before it goes
before it
out
goes
for,
into Memex.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm also going to try and find some pictures of the things you were talking about.
All right.
Like Kathleen, I'm going to try and find that picture again of the palm trees.
that was the cover of one of the bulletins.
Bulletins.
Yeah, and I think we have the negative and the original image. So
When I first came to LSU, Peggy Richardson told me, whenever you write a memo, the first time you write a memo to somebody, you have to go and carry it to that person. So you'll know everybody. Well, the most fun memo I ever wrote was the one there were a couple of fun guys over in public relations, and they would take pictures, and we had a lot of fun with those covers. You know, I mean, it might have been 6 or 7 we did in a row that were all different.
Yep.
And there was one with books flying out of a computer. We thought that was so clever.
Yep.
But
We
yeah.
should have them all framed and hanging in the hallway.
Were they?
For a
Yeah.
while.
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yes.
That's right. I think I did do that. I was really proud of those covers. Yeah.
Actually, I did have one last question. Was anybody still around that met Margaret Herdman? She didn't pass away until, I want to say, the late 70s, early 80s.
Who was she?
She was the director from 1938 to 40, and then she stuck around on the faculty till 1970.
Jeez.
Patsy would have known her.
Okay.
Oh,
I,
and one thing I also wanted to point out is, people used to should bemoan the one that got away. Don Foose evidently didn't get Ruth Baldwin to stay. And if he had been nicer to her, if whatever she complained about, we would have had that Baldwin collection at LSU, but we didn't get it.
Yep.
but I'm guessing Sister Marie was still around a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew,
Okay.
I knew Sister.
And this is just because it's a question I've always had, but I've never. Why were there nuns involved with the school?
I think what happened was that was that period when the nuns were sort of let loose to go find jobs. And
Flocks of nuns. Okay.
well, I worked in a Catholic school when that happened, and they were sort of told to go out and get some jobs.
Okay.
And so I think some of them took advantage of that,
Okay. I just
And-
wondered.
Yeah. And
Okay.
no one mentions Don Foose. You should someday hear Don Foose stories. I only heard them secondhand, but he was quite a director. He was the first one that got the school accredited under the new 76 standards. And he was so excited about that. It got a picture, he got a cartoon in the Morning Advocate about it.
Yes, we have it.
Oh, we've got that.
Yep. It's framed.
And every time I would see him at any conference, he would say, "Do you still have my framed cartoon?" And so that was the new standard. That was why that was framed.
So I told Carol this just the other day, speaking of nuns. So the Midwest Archives Conference, which is the one I started in, they used to have their annual meeting at the same hotel in Chicago every year. But the hotel banned bringing outside beverages in, particularly alcoholic beverages. A good 30 to 40% of the organizational membership were nuns who ran the archives for the various dioceses. And they snuck the booze in under their habits every year to the president's suite where they filled up the bathtub with ice and just had everything. So that's always what I think of when I think about the nuns joining the
Who would
profession.
ever dare look under a nun's habit?
I became very involved in the Special Libraries Association my second year at LSU. I was still working in the library because I met them at a conference in Detroit and they were coming to New Orleans, and I was one of the few people that was making the connection. So I was asked to be hospitality chair for the biological sciences folks for the conference in New Orleans. And I wrapped the boxes of champagne in wrapping paper and put bows on them and had them checked in with my luggage, and then filled the bathtub with ice. And then I gave empty bottles to each person as they left so they could deposit them in different places and we wouldn't have room service being aware of this. So being a rum runner,
Yeah.
either as a young librarian or as a nun, can lead to great career success.
Exactly. Well, thank you all.
Yes.
This was great. And enjoy the rest of your.
And
It's Saturday, right?
It is Saturday. Yes.
the memories from the other faculty and from the alumni.
Oh, yeah. I think that's going to be great.